Welcome to Virtual Travel, everybody. I'm Brian, your pilot for this journey across the globe. But hold on, buckle up, because today's flight is less about scenic views and more about navigating some seriously turbulent skies. We're talking about those destinations where, sadly, black travelers might not receive the warmest welcome. Now, before you grab your passport and accuse me of raining on your parade, let me be clear. This isn't about discouraging travel. It's about empowering you, the viewer, to make informed decisions. Because listen, the world is a beautiful tapestry of cultures, but let's be real, some threads are a little more, shall we say, knotted than others. So whether you're a seasoned globetrotter or just starting to dream of exotic locales, this list of the top 10 countries black travelers might want to reconsider is essential viewing. We're talking about everything from subtle biases that can leave you feeling like an outsider to, frankly, blatant discrimination that can ruin your entire trip. Trust me, folks, this isn't about fear-mongering. It's about arming you with knowledge because, as they say, knowledge is power. And in the world of travel, a little knowledge can be the difference between an amazing adventure and, well, let's just say a learning experience you'd rather forget. So stick around, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's unpack this suitcase full of travel truths. First up, we're heading to the Arabian Peninsula, to the land of oil wealth and, well, let's just say, some complicated history when it comes to race relations. Saudi Arabia, despite its economic prowess, has a bit of a reputation, particularly when it comes to the treatment of black workers. It speaks to a deeper issue, a historical legacy of racial hierarchies that, frankly, hasn't quite been left in the past. So, before you book that ticket to Riyadh, do your homework. Read up on the experiences of other black travelers, especially those who have lived and worked in the kingdom. Because while Saudi Arabia might have its allure, it's essential to go in with your eyes wide open. Next stop on our world tour is Japan. Japan loves technology and order, but there's a hidden truth. Beneath the politeness lies a racial blind spot. For black travelers, it can feel like a spotlight. Japan is a homogeneous society. Stares, housing issues, and entry denials are common. It's often due to ingrained bias, not malice. Representation matters, and Japan lacks it. Travel with awareness and sensitivity. Let's talk about India. India is beautiful, rich in history, culture, and food. But it has a complicated relationship with color. Deep-rooted colorism affects beauty, success, and social status. Fairness is often associated with beauty and success, influenced by caste systems and colonization. This can lead to unfair treatment of darker-skinned people. Be aware of these challenges as a black traveler. Subtle and not-so-subtle biases exist. It can make for an uncomfortable experience. Do your research and connect with others. Be prepared for interesting perspectives on skin color. India has so much to offer. From the Taj Mahal to Mumbai's bustling streets, be aware of the challenges in public spaces. You might notice people staring, lingering looks, whispers, and pointing. It can feel dehumanizing. And it's not just stares. People might touch your hair without permission. It's like they've never seen a black person before. So, what do? Brush it off and focus on the experiences, or challenge biases and educate people. Okay, South Korea, the land of K-pop, kimchi, and cutting-edge technology. It's a country that's captured the world's attention with its catchy tunes and innovative gadgets. But beneath the shiny surface, there's a bit of a complex reality for black travelers. You see, South Korea is a very homogeneous society, meaning most people are of the same ethnicity. And while they're super welcoming to tourists, there's still a lack of understanding and awareness about different cultures, especially when it comes to race. Now, I'm not saying you'll be met with hostility or open discrimination, but don't be surprised if you encounter some awkward stares, hesitant interactions, or even people trying to touch your hair. It's not always malicious, sometimes it's just plain curiosity. But that doesn't mean it's okay, because even unintentional bias can make you feel unwelcome and uncomfortable. And that's not exactly the vibe you want when you're trying to enjoy some bibimbap and karaoke, right? Now you might be thinking, but Trevor, South Korea has K-pop. They love black music and culture, and you're not wrong. But here's the thing, there's a difference between appreciating a culture and truly understanding it. South Korean media, while catching up, still has a bit of a way to go when it comes to representing black people in a nuanced and respectful way. You might see some cringeworthy portrayals, stereotypes, and even blackface, which, come on Korea, it's 2023. These portrayals, even if unintentional, can perpetuate harmful stereotypes and contribute to a climate where people feel comfortable making assumptions about you based on your race. It's like they've learned everything they know about black people from outdated textbooks and poorly researched TV shows. So, if you're a black traveler heading to South Korea, be prepared for a bit of a culture shock. You might encounter some amazing food, music, and people, but also some outdated views and uncomfortable situations. The key is to be prepared, educate when you can, and remember, your experience is valid even if others don't always understand. Let's talk about Israel, a country steeped in history, spirituality, and complex social dynamics. Israel is a melting pot of cultures, but for black travelers it can be a mixed bag. There's a significant population of Ethiopian Jews, but their integration hasn't been smooth. Discrimination and social exclusion are real issues. Black travelers should be aware of this context. Enjoy the history, culture, and spirituality, but be prepared for complex social dynamics. So, we're talking about places black travelers might want to avoid, and Ukraine unfortunately makes the list. Now, Ukraine has had a lot on its plate lately, what with the whole Russia situation and all. But even before that, let's just say their track record on racial tolerance wasn't exactly sparkling. See, Ukraine has this history of nationalism, and like with many places where nationalism takes root, it can get a little exclusive. And by exclusive, I mean they haven't always rolled out the welcome mat for people who don't fit a very specific profile. Now, I'm not saying everyone in Ukraine is walking around with a checklist, measuring foreheads and whatnot, but there's a reason why organizations like the UN have raised concerns about racism and xenophobia in the country. There have been reports of violence and harassment against minorities, and African students in particular have spoken out about the discrimination they faced. So, maybe not the ideal spot for a relaxing vacation. Now, I know what you're thinking. Trevor, isn't it a bit unfair to judge a whole country based on a few bad apples? And you're right, it is. But here's the thing. When those bad apples are allowed to flourish without consequence, it creates a climate of fear and hostility that affects everyone. Imagine being a black traveler in a place where you constantly feel like you're being watched, judged, or worse, targeted. That's not exactly the recipe for a fun and enriching experience, is it? Look, I'm all for exploring new cultures and challenging my worldview, but there's a difference between stepping outside your comfort zone and putting yourself in harm's way. And while things might be changing in Ukraine, and I truly hope they are, for now, it's probably best to err on the side of caution. There are plenty of other beautiful and welcoming places in the world where you can enjoy your hard-earned vacation without having to worry about becoming a news headline. Greece, the land of ancient ruins, beautiful beaches, and, well, let's just say, a complicated relationship with race. Now, Greece is one of those places that everyone dreams of visiting, and for good reason. It's steeped in history, the food is amazing, and you can practically feel the mythology in the air. But beneath the surface of this idyllic paradise lies a less glamorous reality, especially if you're a black traveler. You see, Greece, like many other European countries, has been grappling with a wave of migration in recent years. And as we've seen time and time again, when cultures clash and resources are stretched thin, things can get a little tense. Sadly, this tension often manifests itself in the form of racism and xenophobia, directed at anyone perceived as an outsider. Now, I'm not saying you'll be greeted with pitchforks and torches the moment you step off the plane in Athens, but it's important to be aware of the undercurrents of prejudice that exist, especially outside the tourist bubbles. Look, I get it. You've been dreaming of seeing the Parthenon since you were a kid, and you're not going to let a little thing like racism stop you, and hey, more power to you. But it's important to be prepared and to go in with your eyes wide open. What might seem like harmless banter or a misunderstanding can quickly escalate into something more sinister when race is involved. There have been reports of black travelers experiencing discrimination in restaurants, shops, and even in their interactions with the police. And while these incidents might not be the norm, they're frequent enough to warrant caution. So, by all means, go to Greece, soak up the history, enjoy the gyros, but remember, knowledge is power. Be aware of your surroundings, trust your gut, and don't be afraid to speak up if you feel uncomfortable or unsafe. Italy, the land of pasta, pizza, and a surprising amount of racism. Now I know what you're thinking. Italy? Seriously, the country that gave us Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci? They can't be racist. And you'd be right, they can't. Because Italians, as individuals, are some of the warmest, most welcoming people you'll ever meet. But unfortunately, even in a country known for its art, culture, and love of life, racism rears its ugly head. In recent years, Italy has seen a disturbing rise in racially motivated crimes and discrimination. From verbal harassment to physical violence, black travelers have reported feeling targeted and unsafe in public spaces. Now, I know, every country has its problems. But what makes Italy particularly concerning is the seeming lack of urgency in addressing these issues. It's like some people in Italy are stuck in a time warp, clinging to outdated beliefs and prejudices. And look, I'm not saying you shouldn't visit Italy. It's a beautiful country with so much to offer. But it's important to be aware of the potential risks and to take precautions. Be mindful of your surroundings, especially in crowded tourist areas or at night. And if you do experience any form of discrimination, don't be afraid to speak up. Report it to the authorities, share your story online, and let your voice be heard. Because the more we talk about these issues, the harder it becomes for people to ignore them. And who knows, maybe one day we'll be able to add Italy to the list of countries black travelers should definitely visit. But until then, stay woke, my friends. Alright folks, we're heading over to China now, the land of the Great Wall, delicious dumplings, and unfortunately some not-so-great racial biases. Now China has a long and complex history, but when it comes to race relations, let's just say they haven't quite reached peak enlightenment. You see, in China, there's a deeply ingrained concept of social hierarchy, and skin color plays a big role in that. Lighter skin is associated with beauty, wealth, and status, while darker skin is often linked to poverty and, dare I say it, even backwardness. Now I'm not saying every Chinese person is walking around with a color chart, judging everyone they see. But this deep-seated bias can manifest in some pretty uncomfortable ways for black travelers. We're talking about everything from stares and whispers to outright discrimination in housing, employment, and even just trying to hail a taxi. So if you're black and planning a trip to China, just be aware that you might encounter some, shall we say, cultural differences when it comes to race. And hey, maybe pack a thick skin along with your Mandarin phrase book. You know, sometimes I think about all the amazing things China has given the world. Gunpowder paper, those little takeout boxes that magically unfold into plates. But racial sensitivity? Yeah, not so much. One of the biggest challenges black travelers face in China is the language barrier. And no, I'm not just talking about deciphering the menu. I'm talking about the lack of awareness and understanding around racial sensitivity. Many Chinese people haven't had much exposure to people of different races, so they may say or do things that are unintentionally offensive, like they might touch your hair without asking or make comments about your skin color. Now, I'm all for cultural exchange and all that jazz, but there's a fine line between curiosity and straight-up disrespect. So if you're black and find yourself on the receiving end of some unwanted attention in China, don't be afraid to politely but firmly set some boundaries. Next up, we're taking a trip to Russia, the land of vodka, borscht, and, well, let's just say race relations that are about as smooth as a shot of unfiltered vodka. Now, Russia has a long and complicated history with race, and it's not exactly a pretty picture. From the days of the Tsars to the Soviet era and beyond, racism and discrimination have been unwelcome companions on Russia's journey. And unfortunately, those issues haven't magically disappeared in the 21st century. Black travelers to Russia have reported a range of experiences, from subtle stares and microaggressions to outright verbal and even physical harassment. And it's not just skinheads with bad tattoos, it can come from everyday people, even those who might seem friendly at first glance. Now, I'm not saying that every Russian person is out to get you if you're black, but it's important to be aware of the potential for prejudice and discrimination, especially if you're traveling outside of major cities or tourist areas. Look, I get it. Russia's got some cool stuff. Onion domes, those nesting dolls that never seem to end, bears wearing tiny hats. But if you're black and planning a trip there, you gotta go in with your eyes wide open. One of the biggest challenges black travelers face in Russia is the lack of diversity. It's a predominantly white country, and many Russians have had limited exposure to people of different races. This lack of exposure can lead to ignorance, fear, and unfortunately, sometimes even aggression. So, it's important to be prepared for the possibility of encountering people who might have some, shall we say, uninformed views about race. Now, I'm not saying you should let fear dictate your travel plans, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. If you're black and heading to Russia, do your research, connect with other black travelers who've been there, and maybe brush up on your Cyrillic alphabet while you're at it. And there you have it, folks. 10 countries where being black might just add an extra layer of adventure to your trip. Now, before you start canceling your flights and investing in a bunker, remember this: every travel experience is unique. Just because a country has a history of racial bias doesn't mean you're guaranteed to have a bad time. This video isn't about discouraging travel. It's about empowering you to travel smart and travel aware. Knowing where you might encounter difficulties can help you better navigate your journey and make safer, more informed choices. It's like checking the weather forecast before you pack your bags. You wouldn't go to Siberia in flip-flops, would you? So, if you found this video helpful or eye-opening, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more travel insights from Virtual Travel by Brian. And if you've had personal experiences in any of these countries or have tips for fellow travelers, drop them in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and as always, safe travels.